Hi there, students. This is Luis Silva. I'm your social studies teacher. And today we're going to be looking at one of the most important historical changing subjects in world history, and that is the Columbian Exchange. For today, we're going to be looking at 4 lesson objectives. The first one, we're going to be defining what the Columbian Exchange was all about. Secondly, we're going to be looking at the Native American population prior to European arrival to the Americas. We're going to be looking thirdly at the transfer of animals, plants, and diseases from the New World to the Old World and vice versa. And lastly, we're going to be looking at the impact of the Columbian Exchange, I should say, and how this actually transformed the lives of millions and millions of people. Now, let's look first at the definition of the Columbian Exchange. Well, the Columbian Exchange is the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human population, technology, and ideas between the Americas and the Old World, in this case, Europe, in the 15th and 16th centuries. Really important event in world history that basically brought where we are today in terms of everything that we have here in the Americas. And this is an image, by the way. I want to give you some time to actually review this. First of all, of the movement of goods, movement of ideas, movement of plants, and movement of diseases. Some of the items that went from the Americas to Europe are tobacco, pumpkin, sweet potato, avocado, peppers, pineapple, squash, potato, tomato, corn, beans, vanilla. All of those made it to the Old World, Europe. This included Spain, England, France, and other European nations. Now, from Europe to the Americas, we have coffee bean, we have citrus fruits, olive, banana, sugarcane, onions, honeybee actually, and grapes and other obviously plants. But at the same time, you have this movement of all of these plants. You also have movement of different diseases that actually ended up killing millions of people. One of them that we know, and I mean we hear it all the time here in the United States, for example, is influenza. It's a disease that actually made its way from Europe to the Americas, and it's responsible for the death of literally millions of people all over the world each year. So it's really important for you to understand this movement of goods, plants, and obviously the diseases that went from one place of the world to another place of the world. Now, pre-European arrival to the New World. What was the Americas like before, obviously, Christopher Columbus arrived to this world? Well, for millions of years, for hundreds of millions of years, the Americas had been isolated. As you know, there was no contact between Europeans and you know, these lands. But eventually, with Christopher Columbus, that actually changed. Now, pre-European arrival to the New World, it is uncertain how many Native Americans lived in the Americas in 1492, but the number has been estimated to be between 90 million and 114 million. Now, this number is debatable, so don't take it to the heart, because other historians actually claim it's less, but we're going to go with this number for the purpose of this presentation. In the Americas, there were at least 2,000 different languages spoken when Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492. There were cultural differences clearly marked from the different regions: North America, Mesoamerica, South America. Some natives belonged to small bands of hunters and gatherers. Some actually practiced sophisticated irrigated agriculture. And, these were people that had actually made America a place where they could actually grow and develop. There were complex agriculture-based cultures developed in a number of regions, including the Mayans, including the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, the Incas in Peru, and the mound builders and Mississippians in the Ohio and Mississippi river valleys. All Native Americans lived in organized societies with political structures, moral codes, and religious beliefs. This is important because one of the ideas behind the Columbian Exchange, or the Age of Exploration, when Christopher Columbus arrived to the Americas, one of the ideas was aimed at supposedly to bring light, bring Christianity to and it's unfortunate, and I feel bad to even say it, as they would call Native Americans savages. Sadly enough, it's a term that was actually used by Europeans to describe the native population. Some people actually say it was the opposite. That the savages were actually the Europeans who actually came and invaded and took everything that the natives actually had built for so many years. The largest domesticated animal were, in this case, dogs. And this is something, it's an interesting fact because, dogs are is an animal that many people actually have, as a pet at home, and these are some of the things that were actually known or are known prior to the arrival of Christopher Columbus to the Americas. Now, blaming on the immigrants. Europeans visiting the New World brought the comfort items of home with them, while taking interesting items of the New World back home. Obviously, Europeans brought their weapons, they brought their fancy clothing, they brought their boats, they brought their swords, and obviously they actually took a whole bunch of stuff that belonged to the natives. Now, the world will never be the same. Sometimes the items back and forth were intentional. For example, gold. You have potato here. You have the horse. So those were items that were moved intentionally. But at the same time, you had diseases that were moved unintentionally, that in the Americas at least, it devastated the about 90% of the entire population of Native Americans. Now, let's go to animals. In this case, the movement of animals from Europe to the Americas. And as we know here, we can actually not relate, but we have seen or eaten many of these or some of these animals. For example, cattle. It's something that we consume as part of our diet. Unless you're a vegetarian. We have chickens. I see all the time in restaurants and everything, chicken. Actually, it's part of the regular diet, the regular food consumption of people. And then you have, in this case, as a method of transportation, recreation, horses, and you also have pigs. All of this actually went from Europe to the Americas. Now, from the Americas to Europe, one of the most common things, especially in the United States, or animals, I should say, especially from the United States, is the turkey. As you know, every single year in North America, to celebrate Thanksgiving, millions of turkey have to die. And sadly enough, it's a national holiday in which the turkey actually gets slaughtered, except the one that's actually pardoned by the U.S. president. But the turkey actually traveled from the Americas to Europe during this time period. Now, plants. This is also an important thing. This is from Europe to the Americas. You have rice, you have wheat, you have coffee, sugarcane, bananas, melons. All of those fruits are extremely common in almost every household. And this actually made it or travel from Europe to the Americas. Again, not everything that moved from Europe to the Americas was bad. As I just mentioned, a whole bunch of plants, fruits that we get to enjoy, and it came directly from Europe. Now, from the Americas to Europe, or a whole bunch of common things actually. For example, you have corn, you have potatoes. Obviously with corn you make tortillas. You have beans, you have tobacco, peanuts, pineapples, papayas, guavas, avocado. All of these items that you see here, and many more actually, a couple more, went from the Americas to Europe. So now European diet has a mixture, obviously, of their own original diets, and mixed with the American, mixed with the New World diets, especially obviously with the plants. But again, not everything was good, not everything was the best. You had a whole bunch of animals, you had a whole bunch of plants, fruits moving from both worlds, but at the same time you all actually had a whole bunch of diseases that moved back and forth. From the Americas you had syphilis. As you can see the images here, this is something horrible. This actually caused the death of millions of people. So it's something that again was not intentional, but it just happened. And in this case, it caused the death of many Europeans. And they had no cure, especially at the beginning. Now, from Europe to the Americas, you have a whole bunch of other diseases. As you can see, the number of diseases here is like massive. Let's begin with influenza. Influenza, it's a terrible disease that millions of people actually die of it, from it every single year, I should say. And it's sad because this is something that was actually brought from Europe to the Americas, and the native population did not have like that, the immune system, the body defenses to actually fight a lot of these diseases. And this brought the death of millions of people. Literally millions of people died because of these diseases mentioned here. That includes smallpox, measles, the common cold. I'm sure you probably have suffered at one point in your life the common cold. Obviously now we have like medications for these diseases, but a lot of these diseases, remember, if you're too young, you can actually die from it. If you're of the older generation, your body does not have the resistance to a whole bunch of these diseases, and it can lead to death. And you have other diseases here that actually killed millions of people in the Americas. Now, the impact of these diseases, especially on the Native American population, well, I like this quote here because it actually reflects of what happened during this time period, and it goes something like this. Smallpox was the captain of the men of death in that war. In this case, the war between the Europeans and the native population. Typhus fever, the first lieutenant, and measles, the second lieutenant. More terrible than the conquistadores on horseback. More deadly than sword and gunpowder. In other words, the swords were basically a factor that did not contribute to a lot of death. The gunpowder, the same thing, versus typhus fever, versus smallpox, versus measles. All of this literally wiped off millions of people from the Americas. Native Americans suffer up to 90% population losses in most of America. This is sad because influenza, typhoid, measles, and smallpox took the greatest toll on the lives of people. And, so many people died that it's just a sad human catastrophe. It is estimated that the total Native American population was roughly between 90 and 140 million people, and out of that you had about 90% of people dying literally dying. There was no medications, there were no vaccines, there were no painkillers. They got sick and they died. The initial 50 years after the Columbus arrival basically devastated the population of the Caribbean and Mesoamerica. Sadly, this is a reality that actually impacted the entire world as we know it, and in particular the New World, the Americas, North America, Mesoamerica, and South America, completely devastated by the arrival of Europeans into the New World. Now, other facts that I want to mention really quickly is that in terms of the impact of diseases, in the case of the Aztecs, Cortés was helped considerably by the diseases brought by the Spaniards in 1519. In South America, diseases, especially smallpox, spread ahead of the Spanish to cause a civil war among the Inca, and also weaken their armies to give advantage to Pizarro, Francisco Pizarro, in 1532. The coastal areas of Brazil were settled by Portuguese beginning in the 1500s. In the coastal areas suffered the greatest population loss of Native Americans initially. Again, this has to do with the spread of diseases. It has to do with overworking the indigenous population until they actually died. Alright, so this basically ends our presentation. I do want to ask that you subscribe to our channel for more videos, for more presentations. We are going to be putting together U.S. history as well as world history presentations, so stay tuned. Please do not forget to subscribe in order to continue watching these videos. Do not forget to become part of this channel and you will learn from us. And if you have any questions, please make sure you use the comment section and we'll get back to you. You have a good one and good luck with your academic success.